She thought she could scare me with a single email. But what Karen didn't know, as she snapped photos of my illegal boat trailer, was that I secretly owned the marina her entire neighborhood depends on. And when she tried to make an example out of me, she had no idea she was about to destroy her own power. The email hit my inbox at 6:12 a.m. sharp, slicing through the quiet morning like a warning siren. Subject line, boat trailer violation, stamped in all caps, as if it were a crime scene report. It was technically from the HOA office, but the style, the tone, the subtle venom laced between every neatly typed line. I knew exactly who had written it. Karen. Everyone in the neighborhood knew Karen. She was the unofficial watchdog of the cul-de-sac, polite enough when she waved from her porch. But behind those perfectly trimmed hedges, she was something else entirely. Karen didn't just watch the neighborhood. She monitored it. She cataloged it. To her, our quiet street wasn't a collection of families living their lives. It was a carefully curated museum display, where every lawn had to be measured, every flower bed symmetrical, every mailbox identical, and anything that broke her illusion of suburban perfection was treated like a personal attack. Apparently, this week's attack was me and my boat trailer. It had been sitting in my driveway for just 2 days. Barely 48 hours. I'd parked it there Thursday night after picking it up from the marina, planning to spend the weekend stocking it with supplies, fishing rods, safety gear, fresh paint for the hull. To me, it wasn't an eyesore. It was freedom on wheels. But to Karen, it was chaos. Her email was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive fury, each sentence sharper than the last. She wrote about how the sight of rusting trailers lowered property values. Bold claim, considering my trailer's paint still glistened like wet ink under the sun. She cited Article 4, Section 2 of the HOA Charter, the kind of regulation most people didn't even know existed. She sprinkled in ominous words like penalty, warning, and immediate action required. I sat there, coffee mug in hand, letting her words soak into my quiet kitchen. The absurdity of it almost made me laugh. The trailer wasn't even close to rusting. It was brand new. Chrome wheels, polished frame, freshly waxed. It looked like it had rolled straight out of a showroom. But Karen didn't care about facts. Karen cared about control. She had rules. And her rules ruled everything. I could almost picture her that morning, standing by her front window in her pressed robe, clutching her phone like a weapon, eyes narrowed to slits as she watched me through the slats of her blinds. The kind of person who found purpose not in living peacefully, but in making sure others lived exactly how she wanted them to. This wasn't the first time she'd done something like this, either. Last month, she reported the Johnson kids for leaving a basketball hoop on their driveway overnight. The month before that, she filed a noise complaint against the Thompsons' golden retriever because it barked once, at the mailman. She'd even lobbied to have my neighbor's garden gnome removed because, in her words, it was too whimsical for the community aesthetic. To Karen, whimsy was a crime. And now she had decided that I was guilty. What she didn't know, what no one knew, was that the trailer was more than just a toy. It wasn't just a weekend hobby or a flashy showpiece. It was part of something much, much larger, something she couldn't possibly imagine yet. But that revelation could wait. Right now, I just stared at the glowing screen of my phone, her words practically hissing at me from the subject line. I could feel the tension humming quietly in the background of my morning, the kind of tension that seeps into the air, invisible but electric, like the heavy stillness before a summer storm. Karen thought this was just another win for her endless crusade. She thought she'd caught me breaking her sacred code of suburban perfection. She thought she could threaten me into submission the way she had done with everyone else. But this time she had chosen the wrong neighbor. I closed the email, took another slow sip of coffee, and smiled, because while Karen believed she was the queen of this neighborhood, she had no idea who she was really dealing with. By 9:00 a.m., the sun had barely burned off the morning haze when I saw her. Karen. She stood at the edge of my driveway like a prosecutor arriving at the scene of a crime. Arms folded, chin lifted, eyes sharp enough to slice through steel. The faint scent of her rose perfume drifted on the breeze, oddly out of place for what looked more like a battlefield than a suburban street. Her phone was already out, angled just right to catch every detail of the offense. my boat trailer gleaming in the sunlight like a jewel she wanted to smash. The rhythmic click of her camera app punctuated the quiet neighborhood air like sniper fire. "You're in violation," she said flatly, without looking up from her screen. "No hello, no good morning." Just the cold gavel drop of her voice. I leaned against my mailbox, calm, almost amused. "Karen, it's not rusting. It's brand new. She snapped her head up so fast her sunglasses slid down her nose. "Rules are rules," she interrupted, enunciating every word like it was etched in marble. "The HOA doesn't allow the storage of marine equipment in view. If you don't remove it within 24 hours, you will be fined. And if you continue ignoring the charter, further action will be taken." Her words weren't just a warning. They were a threat wrapped in policy. Behind her, two neighbors had quietly drifted out onto their porches. The Johnsons on the left, whispering to each other, eyes darting between us like tennis spectators. The Mitchells on the right, frozen with their morning paper halfway to the porch table. Everyone knew what it meant when Karen showed up with her phone. Someone was about to get humiliated, but this time, I wasn't flinching. I crouched beside the trailer, running my hand along the cool, polished metal, letting the sun flash off its chrome edges. "You know," I said softly, "some people might see this as a sign of hard work." "Of pride," Karen snorted, the sound sharp and clipped. "Some people see it as an eyesore." I smiled, the kind of slow smile that tends to make people nervous. "Duly noted." Then, just to watch her twitch, I rolled the trailer forward about 3 feet. Not enough to make any difference. Just enough to make it clear I wasn't scrambling to obey. Her nostrils flared. Her grip on her phone tightened, like she was trying to crush it. She spun on her heel and marched off down the sidewalk, heels clicking like gunfire, muttering something about standards and some people thinking they're above the rules. The street fell silent again, but beneath that silence, I felt something shift, an invisible tension tightening, a quiet storm coiling itself for later, because Karen thought this battle was about a trailer. She had no idea it was about to become much more than that. 3 years ago, I quietly bought the small marina 3 miles away, the one this entire lakeside community relies on. Slips, fuel docks, fishing rentals, boat launch ramps. I owned them all. I kept the ownership quiet, operating through a holding company. While Karen was busy measuring the height of everyone's grass, I was rebuilding the very docks her husband's fishing club used every Saturday morning. Her HOA charter even required that members keep their boats registered through my marina. Without it, their access to the lake would be revoked. They didn't know it, but their exclusive lake privileges existed because I allowed them to. And now Karen had crossed a line. Not because she annoyed me, she always did, but because she was about to embarrass herself in front of everyone. That weekend, the HOA scheduled an emergency board meeting about repeated trailer violations. I was invited to defend myself. Karen came armed with printed photos, color-coded tabs, and a righteous smirk. "We can't have eyesores like this damaging our property values," she declared. I let her finish, then stood. "You're absolutely right. We should maintain high standards, which is why I make sure the marina stays clean, safe, and functional." Karen frowned. "What does the marina have to do with this?" I slid a folder onto the table. Inside were the ownership papers, my name stamped across every page. Gasps echoed around the room. "You own the marina?" the HOA president asked. "Correct," I said, smiling. "So if the board would like to enforce rules that could inconvenience the very person keeping your lake access alive, be my guest." Karen's face drained of color. By Monday, the trailer rule mysteriously vanished from the HOA guidelines. Neighbors who had once whispered began waving, smiling, even offering to help load gear. Karen, meanwhile, avoided eye contact whenever I passed. The woman who once ruled our block with a clipboard now crossed the street like a shadow, and my boat trailer, still parked in my driveway, still spotless, because sometimes the quietest neighbor is the one holding the biggest anchor, and just like that, the neighborhood watchdog realized she'd been barking up the wrong dock. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and share, and subscribe to get more shocking stories just like this one.